There are nearly 20,000 murders annually in the United States.
Perhaps it's the weather, but the Pacific Northwest has become the notorious home of serial killers and bizarre crimes.
We're here to discuss those murders,
To try to understand the motives,
respect and remember the victims.
and explore the humanity of it all.
I'm Emily Rowney.
And I'm Alisha Holland.
And this is Murder in the Rain.
In 2017, domestic violence calls in Texas among Hispanics dropped 16%. In 2018, the ACLU conducted a study and found that among dozens of prosecutors across all 50 states, reports of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse had dropped substantially. Sadly, this was found to be due mostly in part to our current political climate. Immigrants, especially those that are undocumented, are so terrified to call 911 out of fear of deportation or worse, they are not reporting these crimes. So, by fear-mongering people into thinking that it's immigrants causing crime, a less safe environment in which criminals aren't being reported has been created. But we're not here to talk about the dumpster fire of our current administration. Those are just some interesting facts. Although ICE didn't exist in 1986, fears surrounding the authorities and the judicial system were prevalent. As an undocumented immigrant, there was a hesitation in calling for help for the same concerns regarding deportation and invalidation. These fears, rooted in racism, are the center of our story today. With one juror in the case stating they wish they could have granted the death penalty because, quote, "we don't need so many of 'em Mexicans running around here," we're going to be discussing the death of Ramiro Lopez Fidel, the trial of Santiago Ventura, and how this murder shook Oregon's judicial system to the core. Sandy, Oregon is a small town not much more than a 30-minute drive outside of Portland, but that really depends on the day and the time of day, so more like 45 minutes. Sandy is a quaint area of Oregon that is the gateway to Mount Hood, so that if you've ever gone to the mountain, you've passed through Sandy, stopping to get gas at the Chevron because it's the last gas for miles, then you grab some breakfast at Joe's Donuts, then you get pulled over in that 20-mile-an-hour speed trap, and then on your way home, you swing by Calamity Jane's and you grab dinner after a day on the mountain or playing in the lakes. That's not an ad. I just feel bad because we're about to get really
Sponsored by Oregon.
we're about to get real not kind to Sandy, Oregon. So I just want to point out it's got some great things. It's precious. It was a warm summer night in 1986 when the local field workers decided to turn their camp into a birthday party for one of the young girls. This became quite the fiesta as eventually the gathering turned into a 100-person party where beer was flowing like wine. As all parties, I had to.
It's my favorite line from that movie.
As all parties full of young drunk men are wont to do, an argument ensued. Through the fog of beer and years, the exact reasons are still unknown. Fists and words were flown until Ramiro Lopez Fidel got into a sedan with another man, Margarito de Jesus Lopez. They left the party and headed towards the strawberry fields. Watching them leave, 6 of the other workers got into a pickup truck and followed. In that car was 18-year-old Santiago Ventura. Soon after, they caught up with Romeo Fidel, who by then had been left alone in the field with the car Margarito had been driving. The young men hadn't calmed down from their earlier altercation. Seizing an opportunity, they slashed the car's tires, shot out the windows with a pistol, stole the battery, all before setting the entire thing on fire. A call was made to 911 to report that there was a car on fire in the middle of a field, leading to the pickup being pulled over by police. They confiscated the pistol and sent them on their way. Probably drunk, as they had been before they got there, so not really sure if the cops just weren't feeling like processing 6 dudes. You know,
It's a lot of work.
That's a lot of paperwork. So they
Was it 4:45?
Right, it's late. Like we're done for the day. Send them on their way. The young men went back to their camp and started to sleep off the booze. It wasn't clear, but I would assume a fire truck went and put the car out. And the next morning, a field hand went to go work in the same strawberry fields. That was when they discovered Ramiro was still there, although he was not in the same condition he had been in when the boys first arrived. Now he was stabbed twice in the heart, and he was deceased.
Was he in the truck or not?
He was laying in the field.
Okay.
So the car had been on fire at one point. I Did not find. It was
So he
really
was
hard to
just
find
chilling
details.
by himself in this field. They came, went, and he's still in the field next to this truck on fire?
Negatory.
Okay.
He gets in a fight with some of these other guys. He and a friend get into the sedan. They take off to like I the details on this case are they were so incredibly hard to find. So like I didn't learn like how far away these strawberry fields were.
Sure.
So him and the friend leave in the sedan, and then the group of guys all get in the pickup and chase them down.
Okay.
The friend that had driven was nowhere to be seen. They show up. Ramiro is just left there. They destroy the car and leave. Then the next morning, away from the car but in the same field, is the body.
Okay.
Is that all?
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
This initiated an investigation which inevitably led police to the group of young men they had pulled over the night before. In all, they arrested 7 migrant workers, including Santiago Ventura. Getting straight to interrogation, officers called in Tim Skipper, an officer that worked in the city of Canby and was bilingual. Working his way through the suspects, it was Santiago who was found to be in possession of a small knife. His behavior and Skipper's intuition told him immediately this was his man. Now they just had to put the pieces together to present to a jury. While Ventura was known to have partied that night, it was hard for his friends and fellow farm workers to believe he could or would have done such a thing. This was his 4th summer working on the farms, and he had never had any legal trouble or shown signs of aggression. Growing up in San Miguel de Cuevas, a village in the province of Oaxaca, Mexico, it wasn't uncommon for young men to leave school and become farmhands, traveling north and south through Oregon and California as the weather and crops changed. They would then, as Santiago did, send their earnings home to their families. Fun fact, the government of Oaxaca only provides up to a 6th grade education, so this plays a huge part in the children becoming migrant workers. This is not surprising, as the tribes of Mixtecs go back centuries as being farmers and villagers. For those of you unfamiliar, as I was, Google has informed me that Mixtecs are a modern indigenous group in Mexico with a rich ancient history. In pre-Hispanic times, they lived in the western region of the state of Oaxaca and part of the states of Puebla and Guerrero, and they were one of the most important groups of Mesoamerica, which is comprised basically all the land from the southern border of America to the northern border of South America. Officer Skipper was tipped off to Santiago's guilt almost immediately. This was due to simple clues that Santiago's body was displaying. No eye contact, he was sweating, refusing to answer questions, basically how I would imagine I would be acting if I were ever
Who is
being
calm
questioned.
and collected
Right.
being questioned by the cops? That's what I want to know.
I don't like to look at people in the eyes literally ever, let alone if I'm like,
See, I'm the opposite.
trouble.
I have abnormally long eye contact.
that's why people are intimidated by you.
I just want them to know I'm actively listening.
So, with the questioning being done, Santiago was taken off to jail. It was decided he would be going to trial without any motive or evidence. While preparing for trial, the prosecutor offered a plea deal. Take the guilty plea of manslaughter, and he would only be sentenced to 36 months, not the potential life sentence that Murder One offered. Santiago's response? I didn't kill anyone, so how can I say I did?
So they're basically saying because he's shifty, that's the reason.
They're putting the pieces they are grabbing at.
He was there.
He was there.
He had a knife.
They found a knife on him, and he's being shady. Or
At this point, do we know, does the knife have blood on it?
we don't know that yet. As you would say, we'll be getting to that. And I read a book about it. I didn't, though. There's no book on it.
I was really excited.
I mean, there probably is a book on it. It's just so hard to find. Santiago was given a public defender that did all he could to help his client. Lawyer Michael Curtis worked with the court to make deals, but there was one request he could not get granted: an independent forensic report on Santiago's knife. I didn't know this until doing this case and a couple other things I had been reading about, that for outside experts, public defenders have to request the funding from the judge. So if I'm a public defender and I want a different blood spatter analysis done, my judge could just not like me, like my client, they're lazy. They do not have to grant those requests.
What would the next step be? Can you go over their head, or would you have to try to get the
denied.
judge dismissed? Or
no, this is common practice in every.
So then you'd be stuck with whatever the other side is used.
Yes.
Yikes.
So prosecution basically goes at a case with an open checkbook, and they can find whatever experts they want on whatever topic they want to go at a case, and the public defenders then have no money and literally too many cases to actually handle. They're not granted the same access to resources, and all of that is just they're paid no money.
Right.
So it's not surprising that so often public defenders do recommend, like, take the deal, take the deal. Like, it's like,
It's the best I can give
it's
you.
the analogy
Is
of, like,
essentially what's happening.
you're wearing flip flops to play one on one with LeBron James. Like, what? You have nothing to offer. Just like, you're getting your ass handed to you. You got to take what will at least be less
That's very
damage.
unfortunate.
Yeah. So I was saddened and frustrated to learn that. More education for everybody today. The judge in this case may not have granted those requests, but he did decide to make jokes about the defendant. An example for this case, when referencing how long it would take for a witness, the prosecution stated, "I have a short witness." The judge's response, "About 5'1". Santiago stood an average for a Mistech 5'3".
That's fucked up.
The prosecutor responded by demanding the judge apologize, if not be disbarred for
Good for
showing
him,
unprofessionalism,
her.
and potentially racist bias. I'm sorry you got excited. I'm totally kidding. That didn't happen.
Oh.
They responded with, "Less than that, haha."
Oh my God. It's terrible.
Yeah. So, of course, they're not, "No, I'm not going to give you money to get this expert. We're already over here making jokes about the height of your client." It was decided that Santiago would not be taking the stand in his own defense. Someone that did was an eyewitness to the murder. And I'm so sorry, I'm going to really try on this name. Epifanio Batista Lopez. Although this was not something he stated right away. After being questioned on the stand and stating he did not see Santiago attack Ramiro, a short recess was taken in which Epifanio went to the prosecution's office. Suddenly, it seemed as though he had, in fact, been in the field when the stabbing took place, and it was, in fact, Santiago that had committed the murder. Another witness was Juan Remigio, we'll go with that, Estrada, that claimed while in the field destroying the car, he saw Santiago standing over what he called a, quote, white bundle, which of course must have been the body of Lopez. Noted behavior about the Mistech witnesses that took the stand was how reserved and almost disengaged they were. While, due to their immigrant status, it would be easy to see why they would be nervous to take the stand, they had to have struck a deal of some kind with the DA in exchange for the testimony. But while giving it, it was remarked that they struggled with eye contact, had blank stares, would give one-word answers, and often would speak out of context and kind of non sequiturs. This led to at least one juror to comment, quote, "They all acted kind of guilty." When it came to the blood evidence, there was none. Sorry to get a little graphic, but when someone is stabbed in the heart, it produces a massive amount of blood that exits the wounds in a violent spray. However, when pulled over the night of the killing and the following day during the arrest, there was no blood found on, around, or on the clothes of Santiago.
And he, I'm guessing, was wearing the clothes he was wearing.
You would assume. I mean, we've all met drunk people, and
You would have no time to clean up the knife and your clothing if you weren't.
let alone you have 5 people in the car with you. But yeah, I mean, you're walking over doing this, and then you're walking over to your friends, and no one sees any of it. It's not in the car. It's not, you're pulled over. The cop doesn't notice it.
Yeah, it would be everywhere.
Right.
I mean, that's a major artery that they got to, so.
Yeah, and twice, and not just like did it and ran, like boom, boom.
Yeah, it would be like head to toe, I would imagine.
I would think it would be not
unless
easy
they
to
had
hide.
like some extension of their arm.
They got
those like crocodile
like
toys
an old
that you can
people
pick
reacher.
up. Yeah, let's
And-
use your knife like that.
I mean, even then, I feel like you'd have a little bit.
Or you're wearing a poncho or something, like a head to toe.
I don't think he came prepared.
tarp.
He was an 18-year-old kid drunk at a party. I don't think he had a murder
Occam's
poncho.
razor. I'm thinking it wasn't him, but
I mean, you might be onto something. The prosecution ran blood tests on his knife, and there was no blood. How
Nada.
can this be explained? Simply, the state deputy medical examiner, Dr. Karen Gunson, offered this reasoning that she called the fat theory. This was explained, basically, in saying that while Santiago pulled the knife out of Ramiro's chest, it wiped itself clean using his fat, muscle, and
Are
skin.
you kidding
And it
me?
did it twice, not leaving a single drop. I've seen forensic files where they're like, and we found a drop in the screw at the back of the knife.
That's ridiculous. I would
Instead,
like to see that reenactment immediately.
right? I've definitely never heard of it actually. I mean, I could understand the physics of like it
Wiping
took
it, but there would
most
be
of it off the
something.
blade.
And twice, it's more likely to be on the handle at that
Exactly.
point.
So this literally left zero, like not even a microscopic trace of blood on a knife
That's
that
the
was used to
stupidest thing
stab
I've
someone in
ever
the heart.
heard.
So the defense obviously and rightfully argued this fact that she put out, but without the financial approval of the judge to get their own
Oh,
examiner, this was the only theory that was presented to the jury.
oh my God.
The 10-day trial came to an end, and Santiago awaited his fate, knowing he wasn't responsible for Ramiro Fidel's death, and his team knowing there was zero evidence to pin on him. They all had hopes for a justified return of not guilty. That was not what they got. While I am unable to find any kind of video, and I don't know if cameras were even allowed, so it might not even exist, there was something that I did find in every article and retelling of that moment. That when the jury read guilty and his translator turned to him to say culpable, that Santiago's response was something that stayed with and haunted every person that was in the courtroom that day. He let out what is described to be a nearly animalistic wail of pain and sorrow. His scream tore through the room as his body flung atop the defense table and he wailed. It didn't take long before a few of the jurors began to communicate with each other. Perhaps it was Santiago's howl at the verdict or just their intuition, but eventually 3 of them decided that they had made the wrong decision.
Yeah, I imagine.
One juror, Elizabeth Linder, recounted the story of the trial to her friend and local activist Donna Slapak. Again, I mean, that's not a Mistec name, that's just a weird American name that I'll also struggle through. Donna offered to do whatever she could to help Santiago, which resulted in her teaching him English as he awaited sentencing. As the weeks went on and his English improved, his only need for communication was to express his innocence. He continued to do so even when given a sentence of life in prison. She then learned about the handful of jurors that felt they had been wrong and wished they could change their stance. But that is obviously a moot point once a trial has come to an end. With the first appeal denied, Donna began working on a post conviction relief petition. She knew she would have to find something substantial to base this petition on, as they have a 99% denial rate.
Oof.
While investigating the district attorney's case, looking for ways to counter what little evidence there was, Donna found 2 anthropologists at Reed College that were experts in Mixtec culture. And what she learned would change everything.
Mm.
Mixtecs do not speak Spanish. Santiago's translators throughout the entire court process, Spanish speaking.
Oh, snap.
Sure, Santiago could actually hold a bit of a conversation, probably as good as I can, which I call kindergarten Spanish because it's always gotten me through a day with kindergartner kids, but not court proceedings
Would
in
that
which
throw out a case?
it isn't good for it and it's good ammo. So, from the initial officer in the interrogation to the translators in court, Santiago had never been provided a translator that spoke his native language.
And that's his right, I would assume.
You would assume, or is it?
Oh, fuck.
Obsessing on this case for over a year, Donna then engaged local activists, leaders, and journalists to discuss Santiago's case. This was important as it wasn't until 2011 that the Oregon Innocence Project was launched. So, for many years, Oregon was the only state that didn't have any kind of designated group to help with wrongful convictions. So, this engagement with all of these local activists and journalists led to a front page story on the Oregonian about the case. Support began to build, and more people began to call out the obvious flaws, such as the entire case felt founded in racism, that the initial officer Skipper made the statement about the lack of native language translation as, quote, they go hand in hand in Mexican country down there.
Oh, boy.
That more experts commented that while Santiago's behavior in the police interviews were perceived as his tell of being guilty, it was actually culturally significant for Mixtecs to never look their elders in the eyes. It didn't take long for Santiago's story to make national news. This then led to financial support from strangers. Imagine basically making a murderer, but through newspapers instead of Netflix. This financial support allowed Donna to make this case her sole focus. With Santiago being so young, at this time he's still only like 19, 20 years old, Donna became sort of a stand in mother figure. As donations and letters came in, they started to be written with Dear Mom.
Hmm.
I thought that was sweet that people were sending her checks saying that. With the case building traction, Donna was able to secure criminal litigator Paul DeMoons. He was there when the DA offered Santiago a second plea. Take a guilty plea for manslaughter now, and he could walk the next day. Santiago refused. He would not say he was guilty, even if that meant his freedom. That was significant to Paul, and he agreed to work on the case pro bono. Santiago now had the people and the money to have a legitimate legal team. They were able to get an expert to examine his knife and explain that the fat theory was beyond ridiculous and
How
made
fat was this victim?
I and again, the details were so hard to come by. He just worked on the farm, so I can't imagine that he was like some old large guy. I think he was like a young farmhand. So he was probably the same, only like 18, 19, maybe even younger.
Yeah,
And he's working all day in the field. So I doubt that he's like a large dude.
right. It's just
So,
so ridiculous.
it's really at that point a skin theory. It's like some thick skin. His legal team reached out to Epifanio and Juan, the eyewitnesses, who immediately recanted when approached and stated that they were basically forced by the police and DA to make their claims of Santiago's behavior that night. Not surprising at all.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Again, these two men were also only offered Spanish translators, not Mistec. While investigating, Paul struck gold, a true eyewitness that not only saw what happened that night, but had a name to go with it. Pedro Guzman was in a second car that also engaged in the chase to the strawberry fields that fateful night. When interviewed, he claimed that a man named Herminio Luna Hernandez got out of the second chase car, then pursued Ramiro Lopez Fidel into the field on foot. It was so dark and they went so far into the field that Pedro Guzman lost sight of them. Soon after, Herminio returned to the car, but Ramiro did not. Pedro asked Herminio what happened. His response, quote, I killed him. By the next
Case
morning,
solved.
right, basically. And by the next morning, Herminio had fled the camp and left behind his wife, his mother-in-law, and his child.
Guilty as sin.
I mean, a little bit, or at least no, innocent till proven guilty, but worth looking into. Paul presented this to the DA, but instead of them overturning the case, they would only agree to reopen the investigation. So, a small step in the right direction.
Mm.
These small successes didn't calm the storm within Donna. She took any opportunity she could to talk about the case. Newspapers, magazines, nightly news, she was on all of them, sharing the plight of Santiago. Then, the biggest spotlight of all, 1990 Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
She devoted an episode to the case, talking to the jury and Santiago from prison. At this point, Santiago had taken advantage of every program he could while in prison. He was now fluent in English, had achieved a GED, and was taking
Nice.
college courses. He had found solace in philosophy, guitar, singing, and poetry. As a prisoner, he was, as he had been when he was a citizen, a model of good behavior. There was a fever of public support and outcry, so when the appeal finally went to court, it was no surprise that the room was packed, as were the hallways. As the defense presented its case for appeal, they tore apart the original prosecution. Santiago's team explained how he was never offered to take the stand. The judge from the first case explained how weak the DA's case had been, and not to mention that they found out about the knife and that whole translator that didn't speak your actual native language thing. The case was closed. Now they waited. But this was not a typical run of the mill trial. This was a judge's ruling. This was a petition. There were no time restraints. So for 5 months, Santiago sat in his cell while his team sat on pins and needles awaiting the decision. Presented in August of 1990, the call came in on January 4th, 1991, that a decision had been made, overturned. This meant that it was found to be unjust, that there were no expert testimonies, and that he was not given the right to testify. But even if his lawyer had told him of that right, it would have been in a different language. Now it was up to the prosecution to make a decision to close the case completely because they had no evidence to move forward on, or to drop all charges against Santiago. Luckily, the governor at the time issued a temporary pardon to block prosecution's ability to appeal the decision of the appellate judge, because that was also an option. So they could have come in and said, we're going to appeal what the appellate judge has said and start this entire process all over again. But the governor put the kibosh on that. Being the prideful pricks they so often are, the DA didn't accept this as an opportunity to right their wrongs, apologize, and seek out the person that was actually witnessed to have taken the life of Ramiro Lopez Fidel. The DA instead made this statement, quote, "Everyone seems to forget a jury convicted Mr. Ventura. The court didn't send it back because he wasn't guilty, it was because of his attorney's competence." 5 days later, Santiago walked out of prison a free man, although the "if we find evidence we can retry him" threat still hung over his head. Donna was the one to pick him up from prison and take him into the world a free man. It didn't take long for his famous face to not only be followed by cameras, but to be hugged by supporters. He even signed his story over for movie rights. One would think that being in your early 20s in a different country than your own with the trauma of a wrongful conviction, you would run home to your family and spend the rest of your life recovering from 5 years being spent unjustly imprisoned. But that was not Santiago's plan. Within weeks, he was in the state Senate supporting a bill to help convicts get new trials. While he did at one point go back to his mother's house, this was no longer his home. He didn't fit in at the farm either. Now he was sort of famous, and the elite of the political world wanted him around, which he said he found really difficult because these, on some levels, had been the same people that had convicted him. This was a struggle for him, and he had grown used to solitude from his time in prison. He eventually decided to stay in Portland, living with Donna and her husband. He took advantage of an offer from the University of Portland for a full scholarship and graduated with a bachelor's in social work and a minor in political science. Donna has since become one of the foremost activists in Oregon and for a time created and ran the Santiago Freedom Committee, a group for judicial system reform. Santiago struggled to find his place in life before deciding he wanted to be in control of his narrative. With his degree in hand, his path soon became clear: to learn from the experience he had been forced into and help others. He then took an argument to the Oregon Supreme Court, leading to a legal change in how translators are processed and certified and the legal requirements of matching interpreters to the needs of the defendant. You know, it should be the law that your interpreter has to speak your language. And now it is, thanks to Santiago. Santiago spent some time working for the California Rural Legal Assistance Group in Fresno before coming back to what had become and still is his home. He proudly serves his community by working with the Oregon Law Center, working exclusively with Indigenous immigrants. When speaking about his experience to the Oregonian in 2007, Santiago said, "It's hard to say I'm not angry. I lost part of my life, but then I think about how there's nothing I can do now to get even. All I can do is try to fight so the same thing doesn't happen to someone else, and to remind people that my experience affected someone's life, that this was another human." Because of the age of this case and what I can only assume is the DA wanting to bury as much of the conversation deep, deep down, I was unable to find if Herminio Luna Hernandez was ever actually found or charged, or if there was ever an investigation finding him to be the responsible party in the death of Ramiro Lopez Fidel. It's understood that he probably fled back to Mexico, and my guess would be not found, that the DA probably said, "We spent a lot of
Let it
money.
go. Keep it
We,
quiet.
yeah, we got egg on our face. There's no reason in even bringing this up. This was just some Mexican kid in a field and no one really cares." Like, I don't know how old Ramiro was. I don't know where he was from. Like, this information is
It's
so
not
hard to come across. It is just hidden away. I couldn't even find, think it was a made for TV movie about Santiago. I can't even find that. So if anyone comes, like, really wants to spiral and find it, that'd be awesome. Because of the passion and support of people like Donna, this case was able to be overturned, leading to the freedom of an innocent man who has gone on to do nothing but work to change laws to continue to protect the innocent. If you wish to support other lawyers who work tirelessly to do the same, Please check out the Oregon Innocence Project at oregoninnocence.org, or you can go to innocenceproject.org and find your state. So that is the story of Ramiro Fidel, the victim, and Santiago Ventura, who incidentally became the second victim of this crime.
I'm really glad it had a happy ending for him.
Right? Yeah. And he's so not alone. The
Yeah.
number of people that are wrongfully convicted is unknown, but I think the recent statistics are like higher than 1%. And I'm like, well, first off, it's way higher than 1%.
What's crazy is I don't think if you really looked at the evidence they had, that some people would even go to court with that.
Right? It was pretty surprising
There were 8, what'd you say, 8 people total?
7 were arrested. 6 had been in the car that night.
Like, literally any of them could have done it.
Right. No, they could have picked any of them. He happened to have had a knife on him. And it's interesting, too, because it's like, well, we're not making it known if we're even solving this murder. So it obviously doesn't matter. Why did you go so hard? Like you said, how did this even get past a grand jury to like be tried?
Yeah.
Let alone just go big or go home and like make up these theories of why there's no blood and all. And it's like,
which I'm still spiraling on that. I want to see a reenactment of if that's actually happened and see the science behind it.
Like I said, I'm sure it's happened to an extent where it's like
completely no blood.
Like you look at any knife, and it's like, oh, you can see where whatever you're cutting naturally takes some of that off.
Yeah, but
and that makes sense. But to be like not even a microscopic trace,
and that
like
he had none of it on his body,
right.
None of it in the car.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So I mean, it's horrible that someone had to sacrifice 5 years of their life, but one, it was only 5 years.
I mean, he did get
and he's
take
changed
the opportunity
like,
to improve himself and learn and apply himself and now save all these other people.
Exactly. So it's something.
It's one of those things like maybe it was meant to happen in that sense, but it's still pretty horrible.
Turning good things out of bad, but and then you think of especially right now with the Netflix show, what is it When They See Us, the Central Park 5, and these men that spent like decades in prison and just lost their lives. Like have you ever heard of Central Park 5? Girl, what? Oh my gosh.
I haven't.
Well, show's done. We're watching it right now.
That's weird that I haven't.
I know, I'm shocked. These young kids were tried for attacking and raping this jogger in Central Park.
Wait. Yes, I did know this.
Okay.
I just didn't know that term.
Yeah, so they were locked up for so long, and it's like now their families have passed away and they didn't get a chance to even make their own family. They're too old to have kids, and that, so it's just like literally your life is lost. And who cares if you got millions of dollars? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a big passion of mine. Is I love the Innocence Project and any group that works to bring light, because honestly, to me, it's more important to have everyone that is innocent be free than to just check a box and say a case
so they
is
can
closed.
close a case. Yeah. You're going to miss like a serial killer, for instance. If you're not keeping those cases open, you have no way of tracking it. Yeah. That's scary. Bye.
See you later.
Cool. Well,
going out with big energy, guys. This is great.
What I'm saying is I'm going to try my best.
Okay. If you catch us in your mouth, I'll give you a treat.
I'm Irish, which is why I want to fight everybody all the time.
Me too, and why I burn.
Oh,
things down? The Irish are always setting fires.
A little arsonist.
A little pyro.
That's what Irish are known for. Being arsonists.
The Irish arsonist was arrested for buggery. It's like a vocal exercise.
I like that.
It's butt fucking. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Buggery is?
At this hour, just those
fucking
harsh consonants in my ears.
Wait,
that is a harsh word. Those are two harsh
buggery
words to throw at somebody. I'm sorry.
Just absolute no warning.
That was an act of aggression. I'm sorry.
I pictured like cute burglary or something. The fuck are you talking?
I'm Mexican, man. My mom's Mexican. Everyone's Mexican.
Are you being serious right
Yeah. What?
everyone's Mexican.
darling, I know it's my birthday.
Can we have a bit of buggery?
Would you be up for a buggery?
But it's my birthday.
Sorry to bother. Just a wee bit.
Wee bit of buggery.
Just a wee bit. Just for a minute. They confiscated the pistol. Could you not hit the microphone?
I'm so sorry. I was crisscrossing my legs and I hit it.
Never had any legal trouble.
No legal trouble.
No legal trouble. No legal trouble at all. He was a good guy. And that's how I'm going to do the story now.
Oh, please don't.
Never had any legal trouble. Now I'm like,
No,
scared to
it's
say
just
it. It's all fun.
Trouble. Penitentiary.
Legal trouble. Dragnet. Bugger my face. Or something. I don't know.
Like after buggery your face?
You never
Yeah.
ate a M. You never ate a M. That's how you get pink eye of the mouth. That story. Wish that was local.
You say glocal?
Global. I heard it too. I wish that was global with my glottis.
Act globally and think glocally, right?
Intimate garbage. Intimate garbage.
Garbage.
Well, just work in the mouth. Ew. And I proudly stand up next to her, them, and defend
They
her still
are neither.
today. Which would you rather?
Grower.
Yeah. Keep that thing locked away till we need it. Don't make me go, ooh, and then go, oh, that was the whole
So
party.
why are you asking me? Like I have a different opinion.
I wanted to know your opinion. Josh, what do you prefer?
Buggery.
Yeah, that's true. They're always full steam ahead.
Yeah. So thick.
Oh.
I don't know that needed to be an added thought.
So
Yuck.
I like it thick.
Don't ever start an episode screaming butt fuck at us. We will never get back
I
on
know.
track.
Now I know. Sorry about that.
He likes when I take
Oh.
out my teeth.
Gross.
Makes it for a smooth ride. Anyway, donate blood. It'll save your life. And someone else's.
That sent a chill through my body.
No, we locked eyes. Like,
That was-
what? Why do I laugh like a velociraptor?
It's your favorite movie.
It is.
So
Truth.
You laugh in that it sounds like one, or you think that is what a velociraptor
When they're like-
would sound like laughing?
No, like I sound like one. Ow, ow, ow. They like do that weird noise.
I thought there was a fucking velociraptor in here.
Close the clay. Don't you laugh, bitch. Don't you laugh. Or just completely drop all charges. Fucking.
What is happening?
I'm sorry. I'm so hot. I'm going to puke. Okay.
Riskier than.
I don't poop out of my vagina.
Anymore.
I got that fixed. Thank you. There ain't no doubt I love this land.
Love this land.
God bless the USA.
Murder in the Rain is produced and edited by Josh McCullough. Written and hosted by Emily Rowney and Alisha Holland. Artwork by Jamie Costa. Music by Kai Pfeiffer at kyfifer.com. Check out our website, murderintherain.com, for additional information on all cases, a fun interactive map, and be sure to subscribe so you can receive our newsletter. Check out the Mad Props page for coupon codes from some of our sponsors. We love your reviews and seeing them on all streaming platforms, especially iTunes. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And suck my balls.
Put that in.
Here's a podcast we love. We think you'll love it too.
Morbidology is a weekly true crime podcast hosted by me, Emily G. Thompson, author of Unsolved Child Murders and co-author of Unsolved Murders, True Crime Cases Uncovered.
911 emergency. My son shot my husband. I need an ambulance. He's bleeding.
Using audio from 911 calls, interrogations, trial testimony and interviews, Morbidology takes a look at some of the most mysterious and disturbing crimes from all across the world.
You know why you're here?
For a home invasion gone terribly wrong.
From shocking murders to missing children, we focus on a variety of cases and put you, the listener, right into the middle of the investigation. Listen to Morbidology now on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, and wherever else you get your podcasts.